Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast with me, Ben Talon, illustrator and creativity coach, founder of the Creative Condition, artist and writer. I bring 20 years of creative industry experience and a lifelong love of creativity, a fundamental pillar of human happiness, to you through ongoing personal exploration and the shared experiences of others. You'll get a nourishing mix of creative industry professionals and people far and wide using creativity in ways that can take our learning to the next level so we can maximise our unique blend. The show's been supported from day one by Illustration X, a tremendous illustration agency representing a shining global roster of illustrators and animators over at illustrationx.com. The music for the show is by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on all good streaming services. And for everything else, for my coaching, resources and inspiration, head to thecreativecondition.com.
And it was an invitation for 100 people to get a fax machine and to receive a counterintuitive question every Friday for a year. And you had to be completely anonymous. And the main rule of Fax Club was you don't tell anybody about Fax Club.
Today I'm joined by members of the fantastic Fax Club Experiment. This was a year-long project, as you just heard in the intro, but the talk we're having today is about slowing down and analog media and deeper thinking and proper communication in this age of digital noise and distraction and division. It's a deep conversation. We're getting into a very fun, very long-term, very transformative project in the Fax Club Experiment. This is the Creative Condition. How are you doing, guys? Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast. My name is Ben Talon. I am your host. How are you doing? I hope you're well. I'm the founder of the Creative Condition. I'm an artist, writer, illustrator, and a few things in between. Oh, creativity coach. Let's not forget that one. That is these days right up there with illustration for my chief focuses. Of course, I list it. This is a trouble. This is a trouble when you have lists of things on your resume. I remember being at Preston City Council, my last job before going full-time freelance, and ultimately here we are 18 years on. Maybe there'll be another one at some point. I'm sure there will down the road. But there was a guy who was one of the management on the team, and I always remember taking the piss because we found his business card and it must have had about 17 prefixes, degrees and masters and other titles and qualifications within the waste management industry, and it's just quite comical. I'm becoming one of those guys now when I reel off what I do. I tend to go with artist and creativity coach these days, but I do so much more. I've got a writer's brain. I realised in my late 30s that I've always had a writer's brain. A storyteller's brain. I'm a storyteller. That's what Simon Dixon said to me from Dixon Baxi. I remember we were having a pint in London after their event with Paradiso. They had a week's sabbatical, and I turned up and ended up doing some live artwork because I knew Hector and Marco from Paradiso. And Simon and Apolva from Dixon Baxi, I haven't had them on the show twice and built a relationship with them in between. And I rolled up there and we were outside having a pint, and Simon said to me, "You're not an illustrator, are you?" And I laughed and shook my head and went, No, I'm not. I've been illustrating for 18 years, but no, I'm not. And he just went, "You're a storyteller." And ever since, I've thought of myself like that because I do a range of things, from this podcast to creativity coaching to my writing, both fiction and non-fiction, and opinion pieces and books and everything in between. And I've got a very voracious appetite for the next creative challenge. But all of it is underpinned by storytelling. That's what I came to realise, and that was very helpful, actually, in helping explain to people what I do. So that's that. How are you? I hope you're well. Let me know what you've been up to. As ever, I want to hear from you guys, ben@bentalon.com, or you can message me on LinkedIn. If you want to talk about creativity coaching, we can have a chat about that. Love working with you guys. I've been working with a few people this year doing pit stop sessions. All of them in person in London so far. I've got a potential remote one coming up with an old friend from school who's based in Valencia, so that one would have to be remote. But I do love doing them remote as well. There's something about being in our safe space and having all that deep chat that we have, getting into your creative makeup, your ambitions, where you'd like to be, where you are, where you're not, what's frustrating you. And putting all that into the arena of broader creativity, so looking at everything from physical health to, exercise, hormones, humour. We go through all of it. We really get into you as an individual with a view to pointing you in the right direction to make your creativity flourish so you can make the right decisions and take the right steps to get on your optimal path. So if that sounds good, give me a shout. I do also have smaller one-off sessions, 90-minute sessions that we can do if the pit stop is beyond reach. But it's all good stuff, and it will all elevate you to get to your next level. So get in touch if you want to do that. There's a form at thecreativecondition.com/coach, or you can email me, ben@bentalon.com. Let me know where you're at. We can have a no-obligation Zoom call. See if we're a good fit. Talk about what your problems are, what your opportunities are. See if my coaching's a good thing for that. Big thank you to the founding sponsor of the show, Illustration X. You can check out their global range of illustration and animation portfolios now, as ever, at illustrationx.com, along with all their great work for the broader industry, working with the Association of Illustrators, the Society of Artists Agents, and direct lines with government, talking, being a voice around AI legislation and everything else. So doing a lot of great work there. Check it all out, illustrationx.com. And please do consider supporting the Ukrainian Institute, who I like to get behind because they're supporting a very brave and inspiring Ukrainian creative community in this horrible time of war. Head back to episode 212 if you want to hear from Olya Protasova, Ukrainian artist and illustrator, championing not just the Ukrainian creative community, but talking about the importance of art and creativity during times of conflict, because it's bloody horrible, and what those people are having to live through is unthinkable. Anyway, check them out, ui.org.ua. You can share the work, you can commission Ukrainian artists, just help them in some small way. It would be really, really appreciated. And if you do get a chance to leave a review, a subscription for the show, rating, tell a friend, it's all really valuable, and I really appreciate the time taken to do that. But without further ado, let's get into the Fax Club Experiment, because I'm talking to 4 of their members today. This was very exciting for me, and I completely fucked up the first recording. For the first time in a decade, I completely forgot to record. Never ever done that. Usually I'll get about 10 minutes in, freak out and think, oh my God, what if it's not recording or if it's stopped? Because of the way I work with my headphones through Zoom, I don't have a backup recording. See that it's recording, carry on. This conversation was so vibrant and so immersive, and because it was 5 of us, I completely neglected to hit the record button, to my shame. And I'm not an angry man, but I got to the end of that podcast, paused Zoom, started to look forward to lunch, safe in the knowledge that I had a really good chat. And then the little downloading box didn't come up on Zoom. And I immediately knew exactly what had happened. I didn't hit record. And do you know what I did? I screamed and I hit the floor with an open palm slap style. Embarrassing stuff, but really, really. Do you know, though, there was a lot of things that went through my head afterwards that I thought, maybe it's a good thing. 10 minutes, 15 minutes of absolute rage and self-loathing. Then emailed the guys saying, I'm so sorry, I've completely screwed up. Can we do it again? And they went, of course, we love that chat. We'll do it again. That was awesome. So I'm very, very grateful to those guys for not only doing it in the first place, but coming back. We came back a few weeks later, so we sort of had time to forget the initial conversation. Did it again. Lots of upsides to it. And lots of cool things that happened in between. We got to bond that little bit deeper because of the extra conversation and everything else. So there you go. So I'm joined by Adam, Claire, Grace and Judy from Fax Club. I'm not going to give you more details than that because these guys were anonymous for this project. It was a year long. I've got the book in front of me, which is incredible, by the way. The Fax Club Experiment. Subtitle says, a crazy idea. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. Written by the 32, foreword by David Hieatt. The blurb is this. What if the breakthrough you need is hiding in a question you haven't asked yet? It's 5 p.m. on a Friday, and the fax machine buzzes with a counterintuitive question. One that challenges everything you thought you knew. One that makes you uncomfortable. One that had no easy answers. How would you respond? What would you dare to write if nobody knew who you were? How could it change what you think and believe? 100 people started. By week 52, only 32 remained. Their journey will transform how you think about connection, creativity, and abstract thinking. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, and the diversity in the questions and the people involved is magic. And it speaks to so much that I feel that we're lacking from our creativity, or is holding back our creativity in today's world. This fast-paced 1,000 miles an hour life that we all seem to be caught up in is starting to wear on us, isn't it? I don't know about you guys, but I look around and I see so much digital fatigue, so much information fatigue. You know, they call it the information age for a reason, because we know fucking everything, and it's destroying our mental health. It's dampening our creativity. I think there's a lot that's wrong with it. And I don't know if you guys remember me saying this, but I was at the pub with a friend, and he said, I think it's time to call a taxi for social media. He said, I think we had a moment there, you know, where Twitter was good, where it was interesting and it connected us with people who we like to stay in touch with, who we lost contact with and the likes. But it's like that person who turns up and is all lovely and charming at the end of the night, but after a few pints, it's like, can we get this fucker out of here? Oh my God, call him a taxi. It's time to go home, mate. That's where we are with social media, and I tend to agree with that, or at least that's my own felt shared experience. But there was an early incarnation of the internet, wasn't there, and mobile phones, where suddenly you could message that close friend when you were away from home, and it was like, oh, this is cool. I can check in and see how they are. Or I can go in that forum and I can pop an image in there of, in my case, professional wrestling, and know that some guys in America who are also into the wrestling can comment and share their stuff. That's beautiful, because that's tribal and that's about communities. But I feel, in a sense, that ever since then, we've been trading off far more negative consequences than we have been taking positive. Can anyone argue that? Of course they can, and some people will, and they'll be right. You know, in their world they'll be right. For them it will work, but for a lot of us, we're yearning for a slower form of communication, deeper thinking, more time to reflect, and meaning in our lives. And I can speak as someone who is 43. I turned 43 last Friday. Feel like I'm starting to come out the other side of a full-blown midlife crisis, which has included 2 to 3 years of what I've now come to believe is disordered anxiety. It's been really challenging, really tough. A lot of mornings waking up feeling panicked, scanning for how I feel, feeling nervous, on edge, not being quite present. And it's been quite horrible. I've managed to create, that's been sometimes a tonic, sometimes added to the problem, because I've been very disorganized in that too. Disordered, to use the same word. By the way, do check out Disordered Podcast if you've experienced any anxiety whatsoever, because it's a wonderful, wonderful podcast that was profoundly helpful, along with Being Well podcast. Those two were brilliant. Wendy Dignan's Overcoming Anxiety was a nice bite-sized almost intro and like snapshot of what anxiety is and techniques to deal with that. But the point was, I was yearning for a slower time in my life. I think back to art college when we had those clunky old mobile phones where we could message each other, and it was exciting to meet new people and go to the pub and all that. But deep down, I wanted something more meaningful ever since then. And I feel like the trappings of Instagram and everything else just creates this wall of white noise. It exposes me to the trauma of the world. Now, I know it's important to stay up to date and fight for people less fortunate than us, but there are other ways to do that, and I feel like having a cause and more time to think about that will make us more likely to actually take action, meaningful action, help people in a deeper way, instead of just sharing memes and graphics and stirring ourselves into a state of anxiety. So that's why I wanted to talk to these guys. That's why I wanted to talk to Adam, Claire, Judy and Grace today from Fax Club Experiment. It was just such an awesome project. It's a great book. I recommend it. It's out there now. They'll tell us at the end of the episode where you can grab that. But I believe it's on Amazon. There's a website for the book where you can grab it if you want to get that independently, which I always suggest that we do. But it's beautiful. So let's get into a conversation about slower, deeper meaning, a slower life, deeper meaning, and just creativity and what it meant to these guys and what the project looked like. Enjoy. Cheers, guys. Fax Club Experiment. Incredible book. Very, very inspiring to me, has brought about a new way of thinking about slowing down, about deeper consideration, and a lot of gorgeous themes that I think that we need in our world. So if you'd be kind enough just to tell us about the project and how it came about in the first place.
So the Fax Club was the brainchild of a man called David Hieatt, who is the founder of the Do Lectures. And he had this crazy idea. I think he'd had the idea for a number of years and he'd sort of pushed it to the back of his mind, but it kept resurfacing. And so he decided to put it out. So he put it out across his email network, and he put it on LinkedIn, a few other places. And it was an invitation for 100 people to get a fax machine and to receive a counterintuitive question every Friday for a year. And you had to be completely anonymous. And the main rule of Fax Club was you don't tell anybody about Fax Club. So we all signed up, 100 people signed up in the beginning, and actually only about, yeah, 32 of us actually made it to the end of the project. And we decided to turn our experience, the experiment, into a book. And that became the Fax Club Experiment, which we launched in October last year.
Well, it's absolutely wonderful. And when it started, I'm interested. Did this feel jarring in any way? Because of course this is an old medium, it's an old form of technology, and it's kind of slower. I mean, I guess this is a big theme in the project is about slowing down and going on a deeper level, less than the surface. Because we live these very surface level lives in a lot of ways now. There's just the speed of communications and the many demands that we're all carrying in our lives. Did that feel like a jolt from the lives you were living and a kind of a novelty in any way?
Certainly a novelty is. I mean, I think it's what attracted a lot of us to the project itself. The idea of buying a fax machine, receiving these faxes every Friday, was a massive pull for me. And as with I know we struggle with this word, anonymity, that was a big draw for me as well because I thought it might be a really interesting project where you don't actually get to meet anybody. You're just a number for 12 months. Was hugely appealing as well.
Yeah.
So and then there was the whole sort of mechanical nature of the fax, going back with the technology. That was a massive pull for me as well.
Yeah, because it's just not so common, is it, these days? And we I know some people, really feel pressure to share, to be vulnerable. I had a coaching client last week, and she said, "Look, do you think it's a good idea to be vulnerable?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. How does it feel to you?" It's almost like this idea that we need to put these lives out there in a public forum because we see so many of us doing it, and the idea that maybe we're missing something if we're not. I would argue that we're missing something in not being a little more anonymous at times and not having a little veneer to hide behind. How did that feel? Would you agree with that? And how did it feel for the rest of you?
There was definitely a feeling of liberation, of just being able to answer honestly, and just kind of put almost like your first intuitive answer out there. Um, yeah, less fear, maybe because you're not worried about reputation or that particular view being, you can be a bit experimental and creative and just kind of let the flow, let it just flow.
I just felt like you could be, yeah, more open. And I think it felt safe as well because it was sort of a closed forum and people didn't know who you were. So I think there was that safety aspect that helped you be more open, and honest with how you were feeling about certain things or how you would approach or certain things. So in that respect, it was, yeah, quite liberating.
And what was amazing for me is the amount of empathy everybody got back for each answer. People showed a lot of vulnerability, as these guys have said, but the empathy that came back, and that's actually what built the community, I think, is not necessarily answering the questions or being part of this, cycle throughout the year. I think it was building the anonymous relationships, but just with the empathy and the understanding, of people you can't see or know their names.
Yeah, I think it takes away the judgment that you can potentially feel from others, whether it's there or not. You can feel that you're going to be judged. But I think it also takes away your ability to judge others because you don't know anything about each other. So you're just faced with these words, and then the words become really powerful rather than everything else that we generally in life then kind of equate to things. Um, Actually, when we got to the end of the project, we all met up for this one day in London, and of course, then we actually got to reveal who we were. So it was no longer number 12 or number 14 or number 101. It was, these people. And actually, it was a 50-50 sort of split between men and women. And a lot of the women, we were like, oh, I thought it was going to be more men. And I really had like this, I'd become quite connected through the words with this one particular number. And then I started talking to this lady. I said, "What's your number?" And she said, and I was like, "Oh my God, I was desperate to meet, but I thought it was a man." And that really
Oh wow.
fascinated me. Yeah.
I had the same the other way. Somebody caught up with me and said I was convinced you're a woman. So mostly because I spoke about my kids a lot, I think. And we had lots of sort of side chats. And again, coming back to the whole empathy thing, she just understood where I was coming from, which was great.
There's something about that format, isn't there? That anonymity, and also the tool that just it removes that. It removes, and actually highlights, like you said, some, I don't know if biases is the right word, but preconceptions and assumptions, which is very interesting. And it's almost as if it's almost like the reversal of, when you sort of arrive and you enroll on a course for the first time and you're sort of scanning the room and you're trying to make these quick assumptions about the other people on the course and who you might get along with. And often that turns out to be the opposite, doesn't it? You might,
Yeah,
something very primal and animalistic in your makeup maybe makes you get defensive about a certain person or a learned behavior, and then a month later that's your best friend, and
yeah.
it's almost a reversal of that. Like you've
That's
made
a
the
really good
bond,
observation. Yeah.
now we'll reveal. It's like, yeah, it's a flip.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
listened to this speaker over the weekend, and it was about etiquette and manners and body language. And he showed this photo of a room of people, and then he sort of highlighted in on certain ones, and he said, that you go towards people that you sort of instinctively feel are like you. And so there was a few that had joined together because of their ethnicity, but there was others where there was a group of women all standing, they all had the same sort of chunky scarf on, and then there was a little group of people with anoraks on in the corner, and then the suits had all stood together, and it just made me laugh. I think, gosh, there's all these things that we
Mm.
don't know that we're doing. And I suppose with this, it stripped away any of that. You had no idea who each other were.
To my shame, I wanted the sort of most affordable, waterproof, practical, no style consideration whatsoever purchase I could get, which ended up being a council high-vis jacket. Because I was sick of getting wet on the dog walk and then turning up wet for the school run and getting another wetting. So, but I started to notice that in winter, when I was out in that thing with a woolly hat, I mean, my wife would be like, "You look like a bin man in a crisis. What are you doing?" But I would notice subtle differences in the way that people behaved around me in the street, like in my past and things like that. Maybe this assumption that I'm some kind of, I don't know, like a council worker or a bin man, or I don't know if it's a masculine thing, but the way it was just interesting. I definitely noticed a difference in how people responded
Mm.
to me compared to when I might have been out in my red leather jacket and a funky shirt at a design event, for example. I don't know, just human assumptions. Yeah.
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 I've noticed that, I'm not sure if this is off topic, but I've noticed that when I'm pushing a pushchair, people look at me
Yeah.
differently than if I'm just walking on my own. I find it fascinating.
Just out of interest, what have you got in the pushchair?
A small child.
Oh, fine, yeah.
Child.
Traditional use of a pushchair then. That's
Traditional
good.
use of a
Not a stack of books or something like that.
Fax Club books, yeah.
I think when people think of being anonymous, my mind goes to trolling and it being, oh, then you can hide and then you can say nasty things on the internet. But actually, this was the complete difference. There was no nastiness going on. The group is actually, it was, yeah, a lot of kindness and a lot of empathy. That fascinates me, that outside of this experiment, to anonymity, that awful
Well done.
word, that people use it for bad.
Although it did get a bit fruity, didn't it, early on, where the rules weren't being adhered to as such.
What rules?
Well, exactly. And the sticklers amongst us were getting quite irate that, people weren't getting chopped because they weren't. So the rules were that if you missed 3 weeks, you would get exited from the group. And as this went on, that clearly wasn't happening, and people started to question, is this happening? And there was kind of two camps really. There was let's just everybody get on, it's fine, it's just just an experiment. And there was others amongst us go, no, I turn up every week. Why are these people not getting chopped? So that was that got to about April, didn't it, guys? In terms of
Yeah.
where all that kicked off, and then there was. I can't remember when the cull happened because we moved from one program to another. We moved from Slack to Quora because you have to buy licenses for Slack, and that's where I think sort of 40 odd people got shed. I think it was down to sort of 60 people because it's 107 to begin with. Then I think it got halved, and then there was the 32 that actually finished it, and then the hardcore 12, I think, that produced the book. Grace and Claire among them. So yeah, that was quite interesting.
It is,
Yeah.
it is, and it's almost it's curation, isn't it? Really, I mean, is it any different to the creative process in the way that to fight for the best creative solution, no matter what the medium, we sort of need to be a little bit, you know, there's got to be quality control and make sure that people are giving everything, I suppose, and fighting for the best solution. Maybe it's like that. I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah, I think I had a slightly different approach to that because I think in the original call out it had said that there are no rules.
Mm.
So then naturally you're sort of looking for some kind of rules or like where are the boundaries and
Yeah,
what's the level of commitment that's acceptable and do I need to like step back? And I think because in my mind, because it said there was no rules, um, I kind of felt like it was a roller coaster, just buckle in and go with it. And that was one of the beautiful things. It's like because we were anonymous, our sort of characters came out, but without sort of knowing, there was no stereotypes or no sort of expectations in that sense. So it was kind of that's the thing that I kept come away sort of feeling most blessed about is the actual experience of the discovery and the like questioning, like, oh, I was expecting that, but that person said that. And it was yeah, that process of discovery was the really beautiful thing.
It's a very uncomfortable process. And I think perhaps, which is an understatement, I think at times it was messy, it was complicated. I think we're not used to that as much. And, David Hieatt, who founded the idea, he won't mind me saying, it wasn't the most professional at times. So I think he started it when we all entered into experiment and then he kind of disappeared. And so you're looking to this person to kind of go, okay, what do we do now? And they're sort of not there. And there was like little mini mutinies, and everyone was just trying to find their way. And,
yeah,
and it is really uncomfortable when the sort of almost designated leader sort of leaves. And you
Maybe.
don't know what to do.
I have to think that from a mind like that there had to be a degree of conscious decision about that.
jury's out on that.
I like the uncertainty of it. I mean, there's a massive theme, isn't there? Uncertainty, and that's a big part of what makes this beautiful. Like I love the coffee shop. Some of these were challenges, weren't they? And this idea that you had to go and ask for discount. It was called Discount Day. The question. It's wonderful, and it makes me sort of shrivel a little bit even thinking about it. And I know that not everyone was able to actually bring themselves to do that, but that brought about interesting responses. So talk to me about that question and that idea of having to push yourself in a way that you would just simply not do in your week to week life.
I think you were the only one of us that did it, Adam, weren't you?
No, no, I didn't do it. I
Oh.
can't. I'm a massive introvert, and it was absolute nightmare for me. And as soon as I got it, I was quite cross, which is great. I was just like, well, I'm not bloody doing that. I don't want to do that. Why would I go and ask for discount in the coffee shop? And that's just through nerves because it's one of the things that I would hate to do. But I did actually go and buy the person behind me a coffee, because the whole sort of vibe of Fax Club was counterintuitive thinking. That was another thing that got me into it. And David gave some really good examples of where actually, if you come at something from a completely different angle, it's often the best way to look at stuff, not basically going the obvious route. So I thought, well, why don't I try and turn that counterintuitively? Instead of asking for a discount, and I chickened out, but you buy the person, a coffee behind you, and then you're passing it on. But I know that got a lot of different responses. Some people did it, some people didn't. Some people had awful experiences, and other people, it was just really easy for some, wasn't it, to ask and to get what they wanted.
I didn't do it.
Oh,
It just made me feel so uncomfortable. But I got a lot from reading the answers of everybody else. Like I remember reading your answer, Adam, and thinking, oh, that's a really clever way. You've come at it from a different approach, and that was what was so lovely, having everybody else's answers, that it really made you think, and it did shift your perspective and go, oh, okay, I could have done it like that, or there was no right answers in any of this.
Yeah.
So, even if you didn't feel you were able to do that task, or it was just so helpful to read everybody else's answers. But that stayed with me, that feeling of almost annoyance that I didn't feel comfortable going into the coffee shop and asking for a 10% discount. And then I suppose I'm a coach, so then that goes into my thinking of, why do I feel uncomfortable with that? And then there's things then I can work on myself. So it helped me in lots of ways, that question.
That's one of the beautiful things about this, is that I loved how much scope there was to interpret each of the questions, and, like, as you say, the responses. Adam, I'm interested how it felt for you as an introvert to even just do that, to buy the person behind you a coffee, and what was the response of that person? Was it something you said to them direct, or was it a case of buying the coffee and sort of saying, that's for the person behind me?
I said, can I pay for the person behind me coffee? And then obviously it got a bit awkward because I had to wait to find out what coffee they were buying.
But no.
So the introvert bit went out the window a little bit, but I felt much more comfortable with that because I'm gifting something. I mean, in many ways, the person that I was buying a coffee for at first didn't understand and then was then quite awkward about it. So really, it's quite mean of me because I'm putting the awkwardness onto someone else because they're getting a free coffee and they don't understand why. Think I'm just some sort of weirdo. But I'd much rather do that than ask for a discount. It's just, yeah, just who I am, I guess.
But I love it because you, like you said, you tackled it in a way that you still brought discomfort on yourself and the person there, but just in a different way. I
Yeah.
think that's fine, and that's degrees of it, isn't it? And I have to think again that was an intention of this, was to kind of almost just open up this new landscape of different thinking. It's like, and I'm very interested in kind of neuroplasticity, and having had the last few years, I've had more anxiety than I've ever known in my life. Partially new parent, partially burnout, the pace of life, etc., etc. Not to go too deep into that, but part of the reason I'm feeling a lot better now is understanding the way that the brain works, and the kind of the threat response and the amygdala, and how this part of your brain is always kind of watching what you're doing. So if you're spending all your time researching anxiety, trying to find short-term comfort in someone else's example of it, the amygdala, I believe, will interpret that as, oh, anxiety is still the biggest thing in the room. This is a problem. I need to keep you in fear mode, which perpetuates the problem. And it's about sort of active discomfort in those feelings, but trusting that you can and will come through that. So I see parallels here in as much as neuroplasticity and the way that we can. And that's exciting to me in our lives. We can always access new ways of seeing and thinking, which is a major, major theme in this project.
Yep. Yep. And I think that's really important. The older you get as well, is to keep being able to think like that and not get stuck in your ways. There's all these old-fashioned sayings, you get stuck in your ways. It's so true. Because you become more brittle then, I think. So it was a good example. And turning up on the day again was a big deal for me because a room full of people, we did an icebreaker, and it's just like, oh, my worst nightmare, being in a room with 36 other people and standing up and having to say something and being center of attention. It was so rewarding. It was so nice to meet everybody as well.
I think, yeah, one of the things about the book, the Fax Club Experiment as well, is it's it's one of those books you can kind of dip and delve into, and you always seem to find something. And in fact, like yesterday, I opened it, and somebody, I can't remember who it was, someone sharing that one of their favorite books is the story of the Hare and the Tortoise. And it's that idea, that kind of like reminder to just slow down, and the wisdom in that, the timeless wisdom. But like, when you're in a state of anxiety, which I've also like been experiencing, especially in the last 4 months, it's kind of this reminder that there's like 32 people all sharing their experiences, and there's like a similarity, and like we're all human, and like we've all got to deal with these stresses and like the anxiety of life. Yeah, really. So that's one of the beautiful things. It's like I think the collective wisdom that's kind of there held in the book.
Yeah.
Yes, and I would also say that this is a lovely example of, because we know that we're sort of naturally we need connection. We need wholesome relationships in our lives, no matter where we sit on the introvert extrovert scale as human beings. It's kind of a fundamental part of the condition. But what this shows is that actually there is a way for it to be something other than in-person relationships. I believe they're important, but this brings a lovely warmth about, doesn't it? A lovely slower pace and a feeling of belonging, and knowing that there are other people in this same thing that you're doing. That in itself is quite nourishing for the soul.
Definitely. It's a very human book, which we need right
Yeah.
now.
And for me, part of the attraction was the fact that it was going to be over the 12 months. And it was something, you know, you were going to have to commit. Commitment was a huge part of it, you know, not for dabblers, I think are David's words.
Mhm.
You know, and that sets a challenge already. You know, I'm not a dabbler, which is why I got so uptight about the rules. Uh, and you know, the fact that we got through the fruity time in April and we all sort of simmered down and everybody found a rhythm, that was beautiful. And I think it was just the constant journey of showing up every week, having to show up, thinking, God, am I going to quit this? No, I'm going to continue on. And you know, there's something to be said around, you know, that commitment to see the job through. I thought was really interesting as well. And that's why I think we celebrate the 32 as much as we do, because we all stuck to it. And we all made the effort to turn up in London, you know, after 12 months of, you know, this fax machine springing into life every Friday, ripping it off, reading the question, and just putting it out into the ether to 107 people that we don't know. You know, it's a huge sense of achievement.
The questions were hard. Some of them really hurt my brain,
Yeah,
and I never really answered any of them there and then on the Friday. They would stay with me for days, and I would perhaps note something down, and maybe I'd edit it. And so there was a lot of that very slow thinking. And I realized actually I don't have a lot of that in my life much anymore. We're all doing things at speed, aren't we? And actually, when we were launching the book, I each of us, we did sort of 32 different launches to sort of let all our personalities out. And I decided to do a launch through LinkedIn where I did some of the questions and some new ones. And then people were putting their answers in the comments, and it had a completely different energy to it because people were answering quickly. And also, it's not anonymous, so they were perhaps being a little bit more censored in what they said. And I thought, oh, this is so different. It's got such a different vibe to it because we're so used to just going, yeah, no, I agree with that, or da da da, and we write our
yeah.
answer. We don't spend 5 days really pondering our answer and really kind of thinking, what do I want to say here? And that's
Because
really special.
it is, because I mean, I answered some of the questions 3 or 4 times and then submitted what I thought was right. So if you think about all those questions, and we've all got different answers, and we may have different responses to that, that we could do another book on that, couldn't we? The ones that we didn't submit.
Yeah. And there's so many answers that never made it in the book.
Yeah.
The book is a selection of a few of the answers.
It's worth noting that everybody picked, we didn't pick our own answers to go in the book. Um, Somebody really did a good job of organizing us into teams, and then we would pick our favorite three, I think it was, or favorite six. I don't actually like my answers that are in a book. I find them a bit cringy, but somebody else obviously found value in them. So, and again, that's the beauty of it.
So
I
your
would
answers are
say,
just sitting there in a document somewhere, your favorites. They're not
Yeah.
even out there in the
actually,
world.
No.
Adam, you were such an inspiration because you visually presented your answer so beautifully, and it was sort of in the style of that old school fax
Yeah.
vibe, and the fact that you were so consistent, find that so I found it so inspiring because I was quite dipping in and out, and the year just kind of convoluted, and I felt like I could commit some months and not others. So
Yeah.
you were an anchor, I think, through the
Well,
project.
that's nice to say. Thank you.
Um, I found the little quote that I read in the book from number 78 about the tortoise and hare. It's very short. Is it okay if I share it?
Please do, yeah.
So it was in response to question 18. It's your funeral. At Steve Jobs' funeral service, the guests were given a mysterious brown box on leaving. It contained a book called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. You should transfer your attention from failure to success, from worry to calmness, from mental wanderings to concentration, from restlessness to peace, and from peace to divine bliss within. When you attain that state of self-realization, the purpose of your life will have been gloriously fulfilled. The question was, choose your one book and what is its lesson? So number 78 wrote, the book I chose is The Tortoise and the Hare. The lesson is that focus, perseverance, and consistency can lead to success, even when faced with competition from those who may seem faster or more capable. Overconfidence and carelessness can lead to failure despite having advantages.
Way better than any of my answers.
Beautiful. But here we go. This is another thing about the medium, isn't it? That's the joy of the written and the considered answer. Again, that time to think and reflect. And like you said, Adam, 3, 4 answers before landing upon one.
Yeah.
It's the editing process. I hear so many people, particularly in our world, I know we both work within the creative industries, so many people time poor and having to make snap decisions and that lack of time for just reflection and the unconscious to do its job and to maybe get that beautiful shower idea or that revelation.
Yeah.
There's a time when people used to only write letters to each other because that was the way things are done. Now, I know in today's world, this is the way things are done, the kind of speed of everything. But what Fax Club does for me is maybe even in terms of a time period, it falls in between those two worlds. It's this big physical medium that's quite chunky and clunky. But I imagine that back in its day when it came around, there would have been cries of, oh my God, I'm going to have to be answering this thing all the time now. Or.
Yeah, but it's an interesting point you raise about, being time poor because, I've got a fair few designers out there and, I've seen the industry change dramatically. And, I don't necessarily think that we're in a better place now. Expectations are more. I don't think we get the time to do the deep thinking that we should. And that was the beauty of Fax Club. Like you say, you could go away and, you could write 3 or 4 things. You could leave it and come back to it. And everything's just so instant now. You've got everybody expects high def visuals straight away, and AI's just added to that. We can produce things, but is it right? Is it? So I encourage people to get back to that briefing, getting the briefing right first, understanding what the ask is, spending more time on that. And that's essentially what the questions were. Really, really good briefs, really succinct briefs, and then spending the time to have some deep thought on that. So it was nice. The rhythm was lovely, just to slow it all down a bit.
I really like the fact that they were hard questions and you did really have to think about them, like you were saying, Claire. And you spending that week really pondering it, whether it's in the shower or on a walk, like just mulling it over in your head. And I feel like what I loved is it helped me think about things in different ways. And challenged me. And I think especially is the lens that we had to sort of think about it in a counterintuitive way. So that was, I guess, another way to sort of really push that thinking. And then when it came to reading everyone's answers, that was also brilliant. And I learned loads from reading everyone's different perspectives and different points of view. And again, then I would learn a load more as well. So that whole process was brilliant.
Yeah, it's layers and learning from one another, isn't it? Collaboration. I would say creativity is a contagious condition, and it's better when there's more people kind of contributing to that. No, I don't think any individual success story is
No.
an individual success. It comes from a lifetime of learning and seeing others and hearing others and being vulnerable enough to learn from people and accept we don't know everything, and that's when you get the great results.
Yeah, because I think once we decided it was going to be a book and started down that process of putting the book together, that again had to be collaborative. And how do you collaborate when you've got 32 strangers? We knew nothing about each other. We did it mainly through WhatsApp, and then later on to the project we started doing a Friday afternoon kind of hour Zoom. But we never really shared what each other's skills were. I still don't know actually what some people's jobs are. It was just who's got some energy, who's enthusiastic, who was stepping forward and saying, well, I'd quite like to do that. And so it was this really messy, there's no hierarchy, there's no leader in the group. There was times I'm like, what am I doing? Well, I don't want to be part of this anymore. And other times I was like, this is amazing. I love it. But it made me realize that I've spent most of my life as a lone wolf. And I'm so used to kind of, oh, I'll just do that myself. It'll be quicker, I'll get on with it. And it's really taught me the power of collaboration. And now the project has the book is out there, and it's quietened down a little bit. And we had a break sort of over Christmas. I really missed everybody. I missed that buzz of this sort of everybody's bouncing ideas off each other. And, again, Adam, I can imagine you've got a team, you're a creative director, you're used to having those people to bounce off. I'm on my own a lot. And I just was like, oh my God, I loved it. I loved having those people to, what about this? And then all these ideas coming in. It was just, I thrived in it.
Isn't that really interesting? Because I think I was at the beginning of a couple of those meetings, wasn't I, where we were trying to formulate stuff, and I was naturally trying to take control, I think. So I actively stepped back because I thought I can't handle this chaos.
It was chaos. Yeah.
I'm, that's just who I am. It's like I have to have guardrails around for my mental sanity or some level of control, actually. I guess I am a control freak, so that's why I stepped back a little bit because I could see all of these threads that I couldn't control, and I felt really uncomfortable with that. So the legendary Hardcore 12 forged on and produced a book, which is brilliant.
Yeah, the interesting thing actually is I think naturally you looked at right, who's the most skilled or the most qualified to do that particular role in a
Yeah,
team. But when people step back, like for example, so I ended up designing the book cover, but Judy has incredible experience in publishing and design, and Adam as well, just like exponential experience in
but we
design.
weren't up to the job.
Well, but you kind of, I don't know, I think I've got the feeling, well, for whatever reasons, you made a space. And I think Judy, you had a big project, so naturally, in needing to focus on that, it created a space. And so, I design posts and things, but I haven't ever published a book or done that kind of work. So it was a joy
Yeah,
to have the space to do that.
it
But
was
it's
if it was meant to be, I think, in that regard, actually, because the group seemed to come together much better when people like me weren't in it. In terms of the skill set is what I mean. You stepped up and took on a book cover and it's beautiful and it's I think that's part of the experiment that actually just because traditionally we might have been the best people for the job, actually we weren't, as it turns out. And there's learnings there for me as well.
Yeah, I think there's an element of naivety is quite helpful. I ended up taking on a lot of the marketing when we were sort of ready to get the book launch the book out there. And I was almost a bit surprised how the group was sort of just letting me like suggest ideas and do these things. And they kept saying, you do know I don't really know what I'm doing. And they were like, yeah, no, but it sounds cool, like go for it. And then nearer towards the end of the project, one of the team actually alluded to the fact that she was a marketing director. And I was a bit like, you're a marketing director and you haven't like really, been saying to me, what about this? What about this? But she said, but that's my day job. And I didn't want this to be my day job.
Yeah,
I wanted this to be something different. And I think that's, we don't get opportunities in life. We get put in a box, don't we? And to have that ability to just go, no, I'm not this. I'm going to be this. And the group just go, yeah, great, go for it.
yeah.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. And I think, yeah, Grace, you were meant to design the cover and it was meant to be how it was supposed to be. And I wanted to do more, but I think a little bit like Adam, probably the control freak in me in the design, I would probably want to have too much control. And I think I realized the same, that actually it's better. It wasn't about it being a polished, slick thing. That's not what it was all about. It is all about, people bringing their personalities, their energy to then what became making it what it was. And I think that's it was right, and I think it's probably better for it.
Yeah.
So very grateful to the 12 that made it happen. I think
David actually set us at the meeting was it February when we got together in London. He set us an impossible deadline, and I think he gave us 4 weeks. And he said, you can launch this book in 4 weeks. And we were like, oh, wow. Okay, I was thinking, that is bonkers. You're never going to do a book. But we went away, and the first couple of meetings were like, right, come on, how are we going to do this in 4 weeks? And I think it was a really clever move of him to sort of really set that impossible deadline, because I think if we hadn't had that, we would have all gone off, and it probably would have just sort of eased away. And so that did give us that kind of high energy at the beginning. But then, of course, got to week 4 and we were like nowhere near. And they were like, okay, this is not going to happen, is it? Let's just back off a little bit and sort of ease this down. But Duncan in the group was really good. Every time something was kind of going a bit awry or we weren't sure what we were doing, he would just say, we just need to make a book. And then we'd all just go, yeah. Like it doesn't need to be this all singing, all dancing thing. It's just a book. Like that was the task we were set. And that kind of would get us back on track a little bit. Like, just take the pressure off. Don't worry about it. I just need to get a book out. That was the point of this. Yeah. And that was really helpful.
Yeah.
I love that. And it's about essence too, isn't it? It's about, it really captures the tone of the book, the chaos within the project. Everything there is that bleeds through to how that's being handled. And I think it works out really well. I love the cover. I think it's great. I think it says everything it needs to say. Looks good. And sometimes that's when you get the best results. Like you said, that's a lot of moving parts, a short amount of time. If you give too much time to that many people, then that is going to go into the wrong kind of chaos. That is going to just spill over into either bickering or things not getting done, and then people turn sour and don't feel as good about it anymore. Can I ask about the physical process of receiving the faxes? Were any of you in a position to receive them, and what did that feel like? Because in my mind, it's this kind of romantic, the room's quite dimly lit and it starts churning out this thing and there's a spotlight coming up at your chin. And I'm getting silly with that, but what did that look like in actually receiving the faxes? And did that bring about excitement, nerves? How did that feel?
That's exactly how it was for me. So I've got a north-facing room, sat in an armchair on a Friday, work from home on a Friday, fax machine would spring to life. I'd be waiting for it, usually about 5 o'clock, 5:30, sometimes 6. My daughter would hear it from the next room. She'd come running in because she got into the habit of ripping it off as well. So that for me was absolutely phenomenal. I missed it dreadfully for the first few weeks afterwards. Really badly actually, because I just loved that whole mechanical nature of it. And I know some people didn't get faxes. Was it Judy? You can get yours to work, or
I can get mine to work. Yeah.
But I said to these guys before, I think I get all of their faxes because I used to get 3 faxes every Friday. So it would go once and it would come through and it'd be a certain typeface and a certain size. 5 minutes later, it would come through again and it'd be massive type, so it used all my paper up. And then I get it through a third time and it would sort of all be full of these different symbols and things like that. So I don't know what was going on there, whether I was just on three things, but that made it even better for me because the thing went off 3 times every Friday night. But yeah, loved it. It was absolutely joyous.
Yeah, mine never worked. It was my dad's old fax machine that I thought, wow, it'd be great to get that up and running. It was up in the attic, so and it just never worked. So I'm still yet to experience that joyful whir and buzz and beep.
It's quite hard to get a fax machine. I mean, you can find them on eBay, so you've got to source it, and then you've got to get it to work, and the paper's really horrible, and yeah, again, like that whole element of it was not easy. You know, David made this hard. And I think some people probably did even give up that early, that they didn't even probably get the first question because they didn't get the fax machine sorted.
Yeah.
I borrowed a fax machine from an old man in my village. I put an email out on the sort of village email system, and he said he would lend me the fax machine for a year. And he had it in his attic, and it was from. And I thought, well, I wonder why you're keeping that. It's quite an odd thing to keep, but it had used it in his old business, and he wanted to keep it to show his grandchildren so he could tell them about his business. I thought that was really lovely. But and it was a big, chunky sort of thing, and it took up half my desk. And and then he emailed me to the day at the end of the year. He sent me this email saying, "Can I have my fax machine back, please?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I took it back round.
Wow.
But yeah, literally on the day, he was only going to lend it to me for a year. And I took the book to him when the book came out. I sort of knocked on his door, and I just, because I hadn't told him anything, because you can't talk about Fax Club. And then I said, "Oh, thank you for lending me this fax machine," and sort of this is what it turned into, and handed him this book, and he didn't really get it. He was very confused. He's like, "Oh, okay, thanks."
Have you taken anything away from Fax Club in an onward sense? You know, since the project, have you any of the learnings, whether it's about slowing down or deeper thinking or making time to be bored and all these lovely themes that come from a project like this? Have you maintained any of the things that you maybe consider that you otherwise wouldn't have in your lives moving past the project?
It's been very affirming in that, like trusting in the process when you don't know the outcome or that and what is success. It's kind of, but having faith in that sense of community that you're in the boat together and you're just going to go with it. And then there's a book, at the end.
I think it made me braver.
Mm-hmm.
I think just the whole element of actually stepping in to do the project in the first place, to seeing this crazy idea and going, I'm in. And I wanted to be with other people that would see a crazy idea and think, yeah, I'm doing that. And I've noticed since the book came out and I've told more people about the project, a few of my friends have almost like openly said, oh, I'm actually quite jealous of you that you've had that experience. And I thought, yeah, I can see, like they can see how much it's brought to me. But I think it has made me braver now. It's like braver to see other opportunities. And even if you don't know how it's gonna pan out at all, it's like, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna go, I'm gonna see. And I think the counterintuitive element, I can hear myself going back to some of the questions and thinking, no, come on, that think of it that way. That just putting a spin on things. So yeah, definitely stepping out into the world a lot. Yeah, brave, feeling brave.
For me, it brought a huge amount of focus on what I wanted to look at next. So, I had lots of ideas bouncing around in my head for a long time, and it brought a sense of clarity for me, and direction, and how I organize myself, what I want to do next, what my values are, and all of those stuff. It gave me time just to really solidify on that. But I think the most important thing for me is the community that we've got. I don't know, I'm not dipping in too much at the moment, but we've got access now to 32 super bright individuals. And I think as a community, we're really strong. And I think the Fax Club is part of that. But I think helping each other out in different ways, I think we haven't explored the potential of that yet. As networking events go, I hate networking, but I've made 32 new friends, all of whom are great and all of whom I can see, great potential for more stuff.
I agree. I love that. I love that, yeah, meeting everyone in person for the first time, but also how that's evolved over the year. And I also loved meeting everyone at the launch event as well. That was absolutely brilliant. And I think probably to sort of echo what Claire was saying, I feel a little bit braver as well in the process. And I've come to really appreciate the power of questions, not focusing on the answer and the output, but the understanding and the process of trying to answer the question. And I feel like that's something that I'm really going to take away, have taken away, and explore further. So always questioning things, coming up with really good questions, and then sort of having fun and playing with the process of answering it.
One big thing that I take away from an outsider looking in on this project is the need. I would encourage anybody at all to actively seek immersion in their lives, immersion in a community setting, because this is completely different, isn't it? I don't imagine any of you ever expected to be a part of anything like this. And I think the lesson is that we all live at least some of our lives by habits and routines. We kind of have to because of the way we do things. But if we go too far down that road, we enter what I heard someone I had on a previous show term to as a river of thinking, where all of our thoughts they become a very habitual and automatic response. A project like this is a complete curveball. It needn't be as cool and creative as this, but to look around in your life and look for the opportunities to come together with other people and seek that kind of depth, longer term thinking, and belonging to something that maybe can just help you get away from the constant short termism of today's world and the immediacy of everything and the frenetic feeling that's out there with the news cycles and everything else. I think that that's something we're in danger of overlooking and neglecting now as a species, is just slowing down a little bit and thinking, like you said, asking better questions, looking for meaning in our lives. I saw this thing. He was a Harvard professor, and he's written a book about boredom, the need for boredom, how we enter the default mode network in our brains when we go for more than 15 minutes of active boredom, and when that then provokes what we consider to be uncomfortable questions about meaning and about where are we going with our lives. There's a real risk that in those habits and routines that we do just get swept down that river of thinking, and before we know it, we're older and we aren't in a place of purpose anymore. This project brings about a whole hell of a lot of purpose, and I think that I would encourage anyone to look for their version of what this brought for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. That whole routine thing, you're right, you get just swept away, and before you know it, 10 years is gone. No new thinking. You haven't stopped to think about what the stuff's about. I think it's so important to check yourself every now and again, just stop and think. And you're right, this is a great example of that.
And listening as well, having that chance to just listen to what someone else is saying, and then think, oh, it's full of new perspectives and connections.
Yeah, really listening. Yeah, as a parent of two young twins, my wife and I have to be very intentional about hearing each other, because on a really basic, simple level, there's always someone else shouting. But also, if you're not careful, again, you get to 8 p.m. when the kids go to bed and you go, well, I've just got to reply to those messages and I better just do that bit of house admin. And it's all stuff we have to do. However, if you have to be really conscious about being ordered with that stuff, otherwise, before you know it, again, like you said, Adam, years have passed and you realize that you haven't had a good conversation, a deep conversation, a proper conversation.
Yeah.
And it's not just that circumstance in which it happens. There are many, I think. Well, actually, just one other thing before I let you guys go, but there's my personal, I don't know if it's a favorite, it changes all the time. I keep going back and rereading, and there'll be a new favorite question and answers in this. But the gravedigger theory, which was about a reporter, Jimmy Breslin, who, faced with the opportunity to go and cover the funeral of JFK, chose instead to go and interview the gravedigger, who was going to be digging his grave, because he didn't want to report the same thing that everyone else was reporting, as dramatic and as big as that was. And I just love that. It's of course that's just about considering things from a different angle, which we've covered in this conversation. But it's personally in my own career, it's been a part of the reason that I've kind of expanded into areas like what we're doing today, podcasting and coaching and things. And in each of those things, I'm not formally qualified because my formal qualification is in illustration. That was my degree. Everything else has been curiosity led. And because I'm not qualified, it's sort of forced me to think differently in each of the things that I've done. And there are times when you sort of feel like, oh God, am I less than because I've come at this without the qualifications? But more often than not, I think if you become different from instead of less than, that brings about your own way of doing things and an interesting way of doing things. It's not about me as such, but that question in particular really resonated on that level. And I thought that was lovely, actually, that it is about just looking at things a different way.
Yeah, for me, that personified the counterintuitive thinking. Actually, it was a great question. Can't even remember what I answered for that one, but it just reminded me of one of my designers. So, with everybody's using AI now, and he'll ask it a question and it will come back with a bunch of answers, and he'll intentionally do the opposite, which I think is great because it's just like challenging yourself to think absolutely differently to what's expected. The obvious answer is say, I'm going to go against that. And I think that's a good exercise for everybody. Actually, just don't do the obvious. Sometimes the obvious is great, but you know, I think the less obvious can be spectacular.
I think it's really good to have a go at something that feels wildly out of your comfort zone. Like you said, 10 years can pass and you've been doing the same job, and actually it's become routine and easy. And you lose that sort of aliveness that you feel. It's kind of it's terrifying, but actually you do feel more alive when you're like, I have no idea how to do this.
Yeah,
I feel, in the last sort of 5 years, I would say I've become quite a hungry learner. And it is because I'm trying to, I don't know how to do that. And now that really excites me. It's like, great, I've got to throw myself in and really learn this. I didn't feel I was like that when I was at school. It's kind of, this is how you learn and this is how you do it. Whereas I'm really enjoying that part of my adult life is, yeah, no, I don't know. And almost it's very freeing and it can go anywhere. So I'd be very much, yeah, if never let that stop you that you don't know how to do something.
Yeah, that discomfort is an indication that, yeah, something is challenging, but what do we get when we're challenged? We respond, don't we? And we forces us to learn. I remember I got to interview Sean Ryder from Happy Mondays, and he was telling me a brilliant story about when Tony Wilson first signed them to Factory Records. He threw them in a recording studio, and Sean said, "Look, we shouldn't have been nowhere near a recording studio. We were terrible. We didn't know what we were doing. But he loved our energy as a little gang, and he liked the kind of crackle that was around us, and he wanted to see what would happen when he put us in that studio and the way we'd think differently about things. And that was Factory Records to a T. That was Tony Wilson's mindset. And there's lots of things that can go wrong with that, but actually, as well, I've seen it countless times. There's so many people, and not just in the creative industry, just in all walks of life, when there's a sort of sink or swim, or someone finds the bravery to tackle something.
Yeah,
fascinating things can happen.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
Yeah, it's not worrying about perfection. It's just going for it and having a try, and that just can be just so brilliant.
Yeah, and trusting that your actual response to that is worthy as well, that it's valuable. To the way you do that, any individual is going to have it. It's going to encapsulate your lived experience and your story. And people don't put value on that, but a lot of people will go around thinking they don't really have a story. I think every human's got a great story to tell if you know how to get it out of them. And I guess this project does that to a degree.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and put some Happy Mondays on now.
Yeah.
Monday as well, isn't it?
Brilliant. Well, this has been fantastic. I would love to let my audience know where they can get a copy of the book.
At the moment, you can get it on Amazon. I believe it's on some other websites as well, but that's where we launched it. And then hopefully soon we're going to get it into some independent stockists. But yeah, at the moment, Amazon's your first port of call. So yeah, please do have a read and leave us a review. We'd love to know what you think of it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see what people make of it. I think it's absolutely tremendous. And thank you all for doing it, because it's certainly brought some new colour to my life.
Great.
Thanks,
you. Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Cheers, guys. I appreciate you taking the time out to do this again, and I hope you've enjoyed it second time around. Thank you so much to the guys from Fax Club, to Judy, to Claire, to Grace, and to Adam for taking the time to talk for this episode. What a beautiful project. What an awesome set of outcomes, and what a fantastic lesson for all of us to slow down. To slow down, to think properly, to reflect, to not think, to just be, and to wait sometimes, and to let things marinate. We have a chance to get ahead here. As creators, as makers, we have a voice in this world. We have a really important voice in this world. Every single person does. We're at a pivotal moment in so many ways in our in human history, which isn't all that long. It's a fart in the wind in the world's history. But look at the sheer amount of damage we've done to the world. Now that's heavy, that's bad. But also look at the speed of change, revolutions that have happened, the opportunity we have in this moment to do something right for our kids, to spark proper revolutions now that can start to give us a glimmer of hope in these troubling times. But to do that, we have to step out of the wall of white noise that is digital communications and AI and all of that bullshit. Oh, maybe I'm just becoming an old man, but I'm seeing that this isn't right for us. You know, this is wrecking our heads. This is leading us to a place where we are anxious and fearful and divided. Exactly what the people with the power at the moment want us to be like. Nobody wants a united front with a powerful voice. Not the people in power, more importantly, not the corporations who are fucking things up for the rest of us. Long-term original listeners to this show might remember an episode with Adrian Shaughnessy, wonderful graphic designer. And I used to ask a question at the end called The Shark in the Tank, because it was named after Damien Hirst's art piece, which was so divisive. So I wanted to ask for a love and a hate based on that theme. And for the hate, Adrian Shaughnessy said corporations, how they're fucking things up for the rest of us. That is sharper than ever, I think, today. But we all have voices. There is an upside to this communication that gives us, this digital communication that gives us outreach and a voice. But to get there, to use it effectively, we have to slow down. We have to think properly. We have to reflect. We have to be at peace in our own company. We have to have deeper relationships, and we have to be able to listen internally and to others. Really, really important. So I hope you've taken something really positive from this show, because now is the time to start doing that. Like I said at the start of the show, slowing down a little, getting organised, being present has been a huge turning point in me starting to get to a better place after 2 to 3 years of disordered anxiety. I hope you guys can do the same. I hope you can find the presence of mind and the maturity to step away from the constantness of our communications and our information age. Start with this project, the Fax Club Experiment. Find the book, grab yourself a copy. I hope you've taken something from this episode. Thank you so much to the founding sponsors, illustrationx.com. Do also check out the Ukrainian Institute, ui.org.ua. And if you want to work directly with me on creativity coaching, you can find all that information at thecreativecondition.com/coach. I would love to do that and discuss how it might look for you. Nice one, guys. Thank you once again to Claire, Adam, Judy and Grace, especially for taking the time to come back after I fucked up the first recording. That means a lot. Nice one, guys. I'll see you soon. Take care.